talk about why coaching, a little bit about how to coaching. We're going to talk about what this training is all about and what it is that we love to do inside of teaching and training and developing coaches along the way. But we also want you to participate. There's several ways for you to do that. One, of course, is a chat box here. This is a great spot for you to let us know, for example, where you're calling in from, as we have people calling in from north, south, east, and west, from Canada to Missouri, from South Carolina to Texas, Washington, Georgia, everywhere in between. And again, just for you to know, this chat box is set because we have hundreds and hundreds of you on here. The chat box is set to go to just Jeremy and I. So if you're not seeing things from other people, that will be why. That's on purpose. We just don't want you to get overloaded. You can also submit your questions to Jeremy and I through the Q&A box located here on your toolbar. It's the button marked Q&A, and you're welcome to share questions there. We may get to some of those questions live today as well. But again, this is interactive, and we're going to have a great time walking through this. So, Jeremy?
Absolutely. So before we dive in, I just want to say that this time of year, the need for coaching is never greater around this time of year. And the season that we're in right now, there's something coming that we call it the holiday hangover around here. Is from Thanksgiving to Christmas to the end of the year, people in the culture, they're spending lots of money on gifts. They're spending lots of money on parties, trips. And what's going to happen, Tim, real quick, I can hear Les a lot in the background, so can you mute yourself if you're not talking, please? Perfect. I was trying to, I'm hearing and I can't multitask. So if I'm hearing Les talk, I can't even hear myself think. So I was getting distracted. So yeah, that there's a culture of spending, and then something's going to happen in the next week, 2, 3 weeks. People that have been spending, they're already living paycheck to paycheck. They're struggling. And then what happens is they wake up in January at some point and go, holy cow, what the heck did I do? I've got this massive mess on my hands. And we call it the holiday hangover. Is they kind of just go through the motions during the holidays, and they kick the can down the road and say, well, we'll figure out how to pay for it later. And in the next several weeks, the next several months, people are going to be waking up to the reality that they have a mess that they've created on top of the mess that was already there. And so if you guys have ever felt that, or talked to somebody who's experienced that, or maybe you're talking to people who are experiencing that right now, they're watching their kids open their gifts on Christmas going, I don't know how we're going to pay for all this stuff. We put it on credit cards. If you've seen that, let us know in the chat. Now, I need you to know this about me. I'm a very needy presenter. And so you got to talk to me, okay? So if you guys have seen that, or you've talked to people that are like that, please let me know in the chat, because that's real and it's coming. So seeing a lot of yeses there. Thank you guys for that. All right. So Martin says normal folks. Yep, that's very, very normal. So and then Marilyn said yes, and then thinking about taxes, and then thinking about summer and vacations, and then back to school, and then the holidays again. It's this cycle. So there's always something going on. But it's top of mind for people. So, all right, let's get into it. So check this out, you guys. Here's the reality. The reality is that in your community, 57% of Americans say that they're living paycheck to paycheck. Now, if you've ever lived paycheck to paycheck, I want you to go to the chat box and in one word, describe what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. If you've ever lived that way, in one word, go to the chat and describe what it's like. Tim, what are we seeing?
Stressful, scary, exhausting, drowning, scrimping, miserable, trapped, nerve-wracking, and panic, along with others. Nothing positive, right? None of these are things like, oh, this is exactly how I love to be. Looking at words like overwhelmed, nervous system gets shot. Right? Everything in our bodies is just firing on all cylinders, not in the best way possible. It is a time of fear. It is a time of frustration, and it is full of pain to live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, not a lot of good stuff for sure. And I forget. I'm trying to find who said it. Somebody said it, and I think it's a good summary of what it's like. And I know I've been there. Well, Jenny just said it again right there, hopeless. And I want you to think about that for a moment. Because a lot of times when I talk to people who are just starting to look at financial coaching and I think I might want to do that, they think a lot of times it's about numbers, it's about budgets, it's about it's some of that surface level stuff. Like if I could just tell people exactly what they're supposed to do, they'll be fine. But the reality is that finances touch every single part of our lives. They touch our emotions, our relationships, our mental and physical well-being, our spiritual well-being. It affects our careers. It affects everything. And when somebody is living paycheck to paycheck and they're living in a state of hopelessness, to help them work their way out of that takes more than just showing somebody how to do a budget most of the time. In other words, we get in there and get our hands dirty with these people, and we're having really substantial conversations with people. And so that's the work of a coach, you guys. It's helping people to take control of their lives, to really transform their lives. Because something we have to understand as coaches, we can't do anything for our clients, not if we expect it to stick. I would assume that if you have children, you don't do their homework for them for the same reason. In the short term, you'd be helping them because they'd probably get better grades if you did their homework for them. But to do their homework for them actually hurts them long term. And just like a client, we can't do this for them. We can empower them. We can challenge them, but they have to do the work. Now, there's paycheck to paycheck right there. There's one more stat that I want to show you guys. 36% of Americans say they cannot cover a $400 emergency. Think about that, 36%. When you go to $1,000, by the way, when the emergency is $1,000, that statistic goes up to 60%. 60% of people can't cover a $1,000 emergency.
And let's think about what that looks like for someone for a second, y'all. So we had unseasonably cold temperatures here in Tennessee over the weekend. And I was seeing on my neighborhood Facebook group massive amounts of people with pipes exploding, bursting, pouring water all through the house, people being displaced because their houses are currently unlivable at the moment and looking at 3, 4, 5 month repairs. And some of the other people are saying, well, some part of this is being covered by insurance, but the insurance is covering the repairs of my house. It's not covering my hotel room for 3 months while we live somewhere else because we can't live in our house. This is the reality for a lot of people. When you think about what does $1,000+ emergency look like, it's a car that goes down that you can't repair or replace. It's a major home related issue. It's a job loss at an unexpected time. This causes some significant stress. This can stress a relationship, such as a marriage. This can destroy boundaries in a family. And this is the kind of thing that can really start to tear people apart at the seams. That's why this is so important. And so it helps us to understand, let's put skin on this for a second and realize this is what it looks like and feels like, live paycheck to paycheck with no buffer between you and life.
Yeah. And so the question is, I hear this all the time, is there a need for financial coaching? The answer is a resounding yes. And oftentimes people think that, oh yeah, of course, there's a lot of people out there that don't make very much money. Of course they need financial help. Well, here's the reality. 1/3 of Americans that earn $250,000 a year, I want to say that again, 1/3 of people who earn $250,000 a year also live paycheck to paycheck. So this problem is not relegated to people who just struggle on the income side. Okay, this happens to people from all walks of life, including people who make a ton of money. Okay, it's not just people who make $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year. This is all over the place. So these are symptoms, the living paycheck to paycheck and not being able to cover emergency. These are symptoms. And I already mentioned as coaches, we get to the root. And so if we're going to talk about in this next section, what do coaches really do? What problems do we really solve? Okay. We got to talk about what the root cause is of people's money struggles. And there's 3 categories of things that cause people to struggle. In other words, when you're coaching somebody, your first job, your first objective is to understand their situation, meaning understand the situation that they're in, how they got there, how it's impacting the people that are involved, really digging to the root. So if you go to the doctor, you don't just walk into the doctor and expect pills to fix the problem. You want to know what's causing this problem so that you can really attack it at the root. And that's what we do as coaches. There are 3 root causes. Money problems are process related, they're perspective related, or they're people related. Every single money problem can be traced back to one of these 3 things. Now, I have Tim here because Tim has been a financial coach for 8 years. He's been a coach for 8 years. And Tim actually took this training almost 9 years ago. Tim, before he worked at Ramsey Solutions, he lived up in Ohio with his wife, Amanda, and he took this training. And he took the training because he was passionate about helping people win with money. And he was looking for a way to pay off his debt faster. So we'll get into Tim's story more in detail a little bit later. But Tim has coached thousands of people on their money. And so, Tim, let's walk through these 3 things from your perspective. Let's start with process. So from the thousands of people that you've coached, Tim, tell us about process and what role does process play in transformation? And why do people not get process, or where does process trip people up?
Yeah, so simply, process is the what we're doing. This is the basics of, are we living on a plan? Do we have a budget? Do we have a particular goal set? What are the things that we're doing? What are the action steps we're taking to succeed with our money? And I am curious, Jeremy, you have that poll ready to go?
Give me a second. Here we go.
Okay, awesome. I am curious, for those of you that have ever taught somebody to budget, so maybe you've taught your kids, you've worked with your in-laws, you shared with a coworker, maybe you've coordinated a Financial Peace University class. For those of you that have ever taught somebody how to budget, what percentage of the time do you believe that sticks? What percentage of the time do you think they actually hold to it? So take a few seconds here to jump in there. But y'all, the process is truly just this. It is what it is that we're actually doing with money. And so sometimes people's processes are broken because they don't have an understanding, because they're not sure what to do. They're missing some information. It's a lack of knowledge. Any number of these things are process issues. And the nice thing about process issues is that if it's truly only a process issue, you can fix it with education. In fact, I would even argue that most of the time people don't need a coach for a process issue. They need something like a really good book or a Financial Peace University class or the Ramsey Show. There's a lot of ways to get information, but it's not really information. We're going to take a look at that as we look at the results of this poll here. So let's give it a couple more seconds, and then we'll see what pops up on the poll. Awesome. There we go. So 86% of you that have ever taught somebody how to budget, and answer our poll here, 86% of you say that budget stuck less than 25% of the time. Mm-hmm. So as important as something like process is, as important as something like knowledge is, it doesn't fix the real problem, because not knowing what to do is not the real problem for most people.
So Tim, that's like telling somebody who says, man, I really want to lose weight. Well, you should work out.
What?
You want to lose weight? Oh, you got to go on a diet.
Maybe I should just eat less and move more, and then suddenly I'll magically be thinner?
Wait, nobody ever. Thank you for bringing this revolutionary information. That's what you're really talking about, Tim. Is information does not transform people the vast majority of the time. There are certain situations where it does, but those people are not. They're not normal. And for some of you that learned to budget and it transformed your life, you're not normal. And it's a really good not normal, but you're still not normal. Most people don't operate that way.
Right.
So most people, it goes beyond process to these other 2 things, perspective and to people. So Tim, again, from your experience coaching thousands of people, what is because we could talk from perspective for a day. Like we spend next 12 hours on this. We won't subject you guys to that. But from your perspective, from your experience, Tim, what is the number one perspective, mindset, belief, viewpoint, whatever word you want to use, that holds people back financially? What's the number one mindset that holds people back?
Yeah, because perspective and mindset are very, very similar here. But the number one most detrimental one that I've heard over and over and over, I can't do this. And the old Henry Ford adage, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. holds true. In fact, I actually got a question a moment ago in the Q&A box here. Someone asking, well, what advice can you give somebody who's looking at all the different things from the government and the inflationary policies and the systemic issues? What advice do you give them? Like, you can't solve those things. What happens in your house is far more important than what happens in the White House. And so when we look at this and our perspective is everything's against me, the systems are set up for me to fail, there's nothing that I can do, you won't do anything. The perspective has to shift to, I don't care what I think about what I look like, where I come from, my neighborhood, my background, whatever. I have the ability to control my money and do something different with it. I have the ability to live differently than the way I've always lived, to do things differently than the way I've always done them. And until that perspective shifts from one of I can't to I can, nothing will change. But most of the clients that I have, this is where they get stuck. Go ahead, Jeremy.
This right here, this is where transformation comes from. I know for me, about a decade ago, I had been postponing my filing of my taxes as a 20-something.
Postponing.
I was kicking the IRS can down the road for several years. I actually didn't pay my taxes for 4 years. And do you think I knew that I had a problem? Absolutely. It was always in the back of my mind, and I get letters from the IRS, and I thought, but my perspective was, it'll be fine. I'll work it out. I was 25. And I hadn't really been smacked around by life yet. And I just thought, I'll be fine. I'll figure it out. That was my perspective. And that perspective guided my behavior until one day I get a knock on the front door. And it's the federal government. The Internal Revenue Service literally came to my house because I was ignoring their letters. In that moment, I had a perspective shift. I went, holy, you know what? This is real. I have to do something about this. I can no longer kick the can down the road. When that perspective shifted, it changed everything for me. And 13 months later, the IRS was out of my life, and the California Franchise Tax Board. Good riddance to both of them. So I'm curious, perspective is a massive thing when it comes to coaching. In your life, what is a perspective shift you've had that has transformed everything for you? This could be money, it could be something else, but what's a shift in your perspective that has changed everything for you? A change in your own thinking that caused massive transformation in your life. Like I told you, I'm needing you guys. You got to talk to me. So, man, what are we seeing here?
Job loss, children, becoming single at 51, becoming responsible, tired of living paycheck to paycheck, a car accident that threatens my ability, the death of a family member, a divorce, a sick parent, turning 50, becoming pregnant. Those are separate, by the way. Having my second child. And so, again, a lot of these different things, a lot of you have faced some real things that cause you to shift a perspective, addiction and recovery, blowing through pension, right? Anything that causes us to take a good, long, hard look. We've all been through these.
Yeah, I want to call something out here because I appreciate how transparent you guys are being. And a lot of people ask me, well, Jeremy, I don't have everything figured out yet. How can I be a coach? And I want you to know that our coaches, if we ask them the same question, all the people we've trained, they would list the same things: addiction, recovery, divorce, sickness. Coaches are not people that were perfect and they decided to help other people because they're so amazing. That's not where coaches come from. A coach becomes a coach because they understand what it's like. They've been through the crap, they've been through the mess, they've been through the struggle, and they go, I know what it's like to fight through that and to struggle there. I want to help other people overcome the things that I'm working to overcome myself. Dave Ramsey went through bankruptcy before he became a coach. I want you to think about that. He was actually going through bankruptcy when he started coaching people industry. This whole thing, Ramsey Solutions, the radio, all the books, everything that you see came from our company started as a coaching practice. Where Dave said, I know what it's like to struggle. I got to help them. And I don't fully know how to do it yet, but I'm going to go figure it out. And so if you're here thinking, well, man, my spouse and I don't totally agree on money. I don't know if I can become a coach. That's exactly why you're qualified to become a coach, because you know what it's like to struggle. And I love what Martin said. What caused the perspective shift? Martin said this. Dave's question on if your kid needed a $30,000 surgery, could you pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
I love that because, Tim, you know this better than anybody, that the way that we challenge people's perspectives is not by giving them advice.
Right.
It's not giving them advice. It's asking them really tough and poignant questions to challenge the way they think.
Because when you ask a great question, you're actually getting them to think differently, and they're more likely to take that and make their own decision with it. A lot of times we think to be a great coach, I have to know a lot. I have to be able to give a lot of good advice. I have to be able to direct people towards the right thing. And none of that's accurate. The best coaches in the world aren't great coaches because of what they know. They're great coaches because of what they can allow the person they're coaching to accomplish and overcome their own challenges and overcome their own perspectives. There's a reason that every professional athlete in the world works with a coach, despite the fact that they would all dominate their coach in a one-on-one game in whatever that sport happens to be. It's questions.
Absolutely. So that's process, perspective. Let's go to people. And Tim, walk us through what's the again, we could spend all day on this part, but what's the number one people struggle that you've seen in your experience that causes people to struggle? What's the biggest people problem that causes people to struggle?
Well, absolutely, it's boundaries. Right? We are created to exist in relationships, and when our boundaries are off, it causes all kinds of issues. This could be boundaries within a marriage or specific romantic relationship. This could be the boundaries inside of a parent and child, or between an adult child and their ailing parents. You could have someone in the sandwich generation who's dealing with ailing parents and minor children at home. Anytime we have boundary issues, these are people related. And we have to deal with the relationships you learn. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Can you, I don't know, I hear that word boundaries. Sometimes it can be, it's a very academic word. Give us a very practical example of a lack of boundaries and how that can hurt somebody financially.
So there was a really funny / terrifyingly sad story that made national news a few years ago. There was a 35-year-old adult who was forcibly evicted from his parents' basement by a court system. This is a perfect example of what happens when we don't set boundaries, when we try to do things for people that they could or should do for themselves. When we don't say, hey, this is not okay. We're not going to allow this. And for this particular set of parents who allowed their adult son to stay far too long and continue to pay his way rather than help him deal with the things he needed to do, created a situation that made them all look terrible in the national news. And so we have to be thinking about these boundaries. How do we help people have the right problems so that they're willing to do the right things to change their lives for the better? And sometimes that means letting somebody not within a particular space of me. This sometimes means I don't give money in certain locations. I love to be generous. But I'm also going to set good boundaries around that. Where do our boundaries exist? And how do we use boundaries to protect us and our goals and our dreams and our futures and the futures for our kids?
Yeah, I think Rebecca in the chat said it really well. And basically, it's having boundaries is having the ability to say no. And a lot of people have a hard time saying no, and so they'll take on debt. They'll co-sign for a loan because they have a hard time saying no. So we have process, we have perspective, and we have people. And when you're coaching people, when you're coaching somebody, these are the categories of things that cause people to struggle. And so our objective is to identify where is the struggle. Now, here's the reality. When you're coaching people, 99 times out of 100, there's opportunity in all three areas to help somebody grow. It's usually not one, usually like 99.999% of the time, it's three, okay? So, all right. So that is what coaches do. We've talked about the need. We've talked about what coaches actually do. Okay. I want to walk through what it looks like to go through financial coach master training. What does it look like to be trained by our team? And then we're going to start to answer some really important questions that we know you guys have. The big questions that we're going to tackle towards the end here. Number one, I've seen this many times in the chat, and sorry if I'm bumping the table and moving the laptop. I just get very excited. The number one question we hear is, how do we find people to coach? So make sure you stick around because we're going to talk about that one first. The second question we're going to ask, we're going to help answer is, how do you charge for coaching, or how do people afford coaching if they're struggling? That's another very commonly asked question that we're going to get to as well. Okay, so how do I find people, and how do I charge for this, or how do people afford it? Those are the two big questions we're going to answer towards the end. Okay. Now, before we do that, I want to get to what does it look like to be trained by our team. Now, before I get into that, we have been training people for the better part of 30 years. Okay. Ramsey Solutions has trained tens of thousands of people all over the country. Okay. All over the country, frankly, all over the world, to be able to do this. Now, you might be asking yourself, is it saturated? Are there too many coaches out there? Well, let me ask you guys this question. Outside of Tim and myself, how many financial coaches do you know? Or have you ever met? And you can't use me or Dave, or me or Tim. How many do you know or have you met? I'm seeing a lot of zeros, a lot of nones. Somebody tell me you've met. Okay, somebody said 5. That's great. All right. So point is, we've trained a few dozen, how do you say that? 20, 30,000 people over the years we've trained. So, Rich, a lot of financial planners, but not a lot of coaches. So we got a long way to go. There are 1 million real estate agents in the United States, and there are about 400,000 financial advisors. Okay. We've trained, 30,000 coaches. So we got a lot of room to grow. All right. 25 years of doing this, and we've learned quite a bit along the way. And so that's the benefit that you guys have, is our training has never been better because we've never been better. We have learned over the years. And so there's a lot that goes into this, but I'm going to break it down very simply. There's 3 phases we take you through to prepare you to become 3 things: confident as a coach, competent as a coach, and credible. Confident, competent, and credible is the purpose of our training. And so the phases that we take you through, first is you got to learn. How do you find people to coach? How do you charge for coaching? We get to teach you those things. How do you get the word out? How do you do consultations? How do you do your first coaching session? How do you plan your 3rd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 10th, 15th coaching session with somebody? How do you coach different personality styles? What happens when you're in like a bankruptcy situation? Or how do you deal with life insurance and investing? And there's all these things that we got to teach you about how to coach. How do you ask really good questions? How do you challenge perspectives? How do you coach a married couple who's just not on the same page? There's a lot to learn. So we do that first. But it's not enough to just have head knowledge. We know that application is just as important. And so in the second phase of training, we take you through the application, where you're actually able to implement the things that you're learning with our coaches there with you, because that's where it becomes real. And that's where you really start to internalize what you're learning. So you learn, you apply what you're learning, and then the rest of our year is focused on your growth, helping you grow and develop yourself as a coach. And so when you take Financial Coach Master Training, which is the training that we're talking about, that's the name of it, Financial Coach Master Training. A couple things to know. It's mostly self-paced. There's a live component, which is obviously live, so it can't be self-paced because it's live. And this is going to take you about 45 to 60 days to complete the entire process. On average, here's the thing. You have access for an entire year to our training. When you sign up, you have access for an entire year. So let's get into some of the specifics. The first is the online training portion. This is a coaching course that's online. So if you have a phone or a tablet or a computer and an internet access, you can access the training. Okay. This is the part that is self-paced. There are 15 video lessons. I think there's 74 or 75 videos total. And after each lesson, you'll take a quiz or a test or do some sort of application to make sure that not only are you getting the right information, but you're retaining the right information, thus building your confidence and your competence. So once you complete the online portion of the training, you earn the designation of a Ramsey Solutions Master Financial Coach, or a lot of coaches shorten that to Ramsey Coach. Okay, but you earn that designation, and you can use that in your email signature, business cards, what have you, and that designation is yours. And that is not a designation that requires renewal or any ongoing education. Once you have it, that is your designation, and you get the certificate that goes along with it. Now, that's the online portion. A lot of the learning portion. Now, I want to focus on the second part, and to do that, I'm going to have Tim walk through it. But before I do that, if you're going to become excellent at something, then can we all agree that you want to surround yourself with and learn from people who are excellent at the thing you want to become excellent at? If you've really wanted to work on your marriage, I'm going to assume that you spent time with people that have a strong marriage. If you want to learn how to play a sport or take on a hobby of some kind, you're going to spend time with people that are already doing that thing because they see things that you don't see. I assume for those of you that are parents out there, when you became a parent and you're probably terrified, I got this little human that I'm responsible for. You latched on to people who were her parents for a long time to be able to learn and grow from. Give me a yes if that's how you approach things, if you're going to learn something. Because this is the most important part of the training that we're about to talk about. Marilyn says, yes, I went to mom's groups. That's awesome. So if you're going to become a coach, you want to learn from excellent coaches. And so Tim and the squad of coaches that Tim is representing here on this call, you get access to our team of coaches for the entire year. In other words, this is not something that you're meant to do alone. And so these are the coaches that Dave Ramsey trusts. So when Dave has a friend or a family member or a widow that he wants to connect with a coach, the Tim and the other coaches that you get access to are Dave Ramsey's trusted coaches. And so they're some of the best coaches on the planet. And I had to tee it up like that because I know Tim's not going to talk about himself like that. But it's very true. And so if you're going to become a coach, these are the people you want in your corner. So Tim, talk to us about the live coaching and what that looks like.
Yeah, so the live coaching, really excited about. There's a good amount of coaching that we get to do. And my favorite part is these first 5 calls inside of your time in FCMT. This is all about helping you learn and grow and develop and apply the things that you've been learning. These are done through Zoom in a small group. We allow no more than 30 people on these calls, so we can actually have some really good back and forth. You can get real-time feedback from your peers, from your colleagues. And honestly, this is the way that you start building your network. This is the way that you start building your accountability. This is the way that you start building the people that you can turn to help you as you step out into the coaching world, because it's not always an easy thing to do. Now, one of my other favorite things is twice a month we do this really fun webinar style thing that we call Real Talk. And this is a panel discussion. The senior coaches get together. We host a panel. We usually have 400 or 500 on live. It is a blast. We turn the chat box on to everybody. It is truly fun. And we love getting to do this. We do record those, and you can actually access those with an FCMT membership in podcast format as well. We talk about things that are either going to help you become a better coach or become better in running your business or become better at one of these particular areas inside of coaching. But a lot of really great discussions happening there. So a lot of really cool opportunities to get connected, to share, to learn, to grow, develop. But you're not doing this totally on your own. If you hear nothing else on this slide, that's it. You are going to be connected with other people walking through these things.
Yeah, that's the big thing you got to take away. What we don't do is give you some information, watch some videos, and then kick you out the nest and say, fly, little birdie, good luck, hope it works out. Okay? There's some programs that'll do that. You get the opportunity to have our team invest in you, and that's a big deal. So, All right. So you get the online training, you get the live coaching calls, access to those humans for the entire year. The last thing you get is a set of tools and resources to help you coach people, run your coaching practice. So the first thing is a set of calculators, very practical tool when you're sitting down with a client and having an insurance conversation, a retirement conversation, an investment conversation, to be able to help them figure out, okay, these are tools to help the client figure out what's the best route for them. You also get access to all the forms that we use here at Ramsey when we're coaching somebody. And then lastly, a library of recorded coaching calls. So I don't know about you guys, but if you're like me, and give me a yes if you're like me, if I'm going to learn how to do something, I need to see it. So I've played chess my whole life, but I got beat by somebody and I got really mad and I said, I got to get good at chess. So literally over the Christmas weekend, I didn't even tell Tim this. I'm literally on YouTube I'm Googling like chess master tournaments, and I'm watching replays of like these chess masters and trying to figure out how they doing their things. I got to see what it looks like if I'm going to be good at it. Okay.
This may be the single nerdiest thing I've ever heard you say out loud, Jeremy.
I'm not a nerd, but I just went, you know what?
You can't say that anymore after this weekend.
I'm freaking be really good at chess. I need to go watch these, searching Bobby Fischer. So anyways, point is you got a lot of people are visual, and I know I am. And so if you are visual, this part will be super valuable for you because you get to go in and watch Tim do a consultation. You could pause and rewind and go back and say, wait, and examine, how did they really do that? And that visual is huge. And so what I want you guys to hear, you get access to the training material for a year, you get access to the humans for the year, and then you get access to the tools and resources for a year. Because this is not an overnight flash in the pan, take a course and now you're making bank as a financial coach. There's work here. And we want to be able to partner with you, not for like a couple weeks and then say good luck. No, we want to be able to invest in you over the course of the year to really set you on a trajectory to make an impact in your community, to make an impact with the people that you're called to serve. So, all right. So that's the first part. I've had this question a few times. What's it cost to go through the training? And so the investment to go through I put my hands up here. The investment to go through the training is $19.95, so it's just shy of $2,000. Actually, the price. So that's the current price. The price is going up to $22.95 starting on January 1st. Okay, the price is going up to about $2,300 for that 1 year of access. Now we are doing something this month that's still going on. It's kind of a wild deal. And so make sure you stick around because in the next 20 minutes as we finish this call, we're scheduled to go till 1. We got another 20 minutes. I'm going to share with you what we're doing this month that let's just say you don't want to miss it. Okay? So, Tim, there's several questions that we want to answer. Number one, how do I find people to coach? So if you've been thinking about that, if you have that question, click that raise hand button in your Zoom app. I just love to kind of gauge everyone that's here to see who's been thinking that. So 50, 60, 7, it looks like about 70. Okay. There you go. 68, 60, 90 you guys. Awesome. All right. So Tim, am I going to call on some random person or do you have somebody that you've been chatting with in the chat box that we can talk to?
Keep it random. I've been having lots of great chats going. By the way, that's why I've been talking less. Also, I've had so many great chat conversations with so many of you. This is a blast. And
I can't multitask to save my life. So I don't know how
I grew up in the instant messenger generation, baby. I still got it.
See, I did too, but I'm not that smart, so.
That's why I'm better at chess than you.
I'm going to cancel this webinar right now and play, okay? All right. Keep your hand raised if you are willing to talk with Tim and myself, where we would actually unmute you and have a conversation. Think like a quick 5-minute conversation. Kind of like you're calling into the Ramsey show with way fewer people than that, okay? All right. So I'm going to click on, we're going to go with Alyssa Silverman. Alyssa, go ahead and hit that unmute button for us. Alyssa put her hand down, so maybe she didn't want to talk after all. So
I'm very scary.
Oh, Alyssa said it won't let me. Hold on.
Try it again.
Let's try it again. Alyssa, you should see a little pop-up that says unmute yourself. Or probably doesn't say that, but it'll say like the host is recommending.
Oh, she said her computer doesn't have a microphone.
Have a mic. All right. No worries, Alyssa. No worries.
That would be the problem, yes.
Let's go to Sean Belnett. Sean, go ahead and hit that unmute button for us. Are you there?
I'm here.
Thank you for being here, Sean. Where are you joining from?
Glendale, Arizona.
Awesome.
Glendale. Is that east of Phoenix?
It's west of Phoenix, closer to California, but it's just on the outskirts.
Oh, okay. My parents live in Buckeye. You know where
That's
that?
south. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks for being here, Sean. So,
Thank you.
Your question of how do I find people? That's been on your mind?
Yeah, I don't know a lot of people that are connected with Ramsey. Like I've drank the Kool-Aid, I've worked the baby steps, listened to the
delicious.
podcast every day. It is delicious.
Sure.
But like I stress that I don't know like the right amount of people, or the right people for this,
Sure.
Well, Sean, is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions?
Of course.
Awesome. Who are you most passionate about helping?
The truth. People who are getting out of prison. I did a ton of time in prison, and I got out. I learned the baby steps while I was in prison because I listened to Dave on the radio. I got out. I listened to the podcasts. I wrote the baby steps. I now own a home. I own my car. And I've been 4+ years out of prison, and I've put myself in a financial position where people pay my mortgage, and I work a job, and it's amazing. But I want to help those people figure out that they can do that. You know what I mean?
I wish I could shake your hand, Sean. That's amazing.
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate that. I credit a lot to Dave and the baby steps, but it's hard work. I just put in the effort.
And that's the key. None of us here, Dave didn't do any of the work for you. He gave you the tools and you did it. So that's a big deal. Well done, Sean.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Sean, you've got a clear mission.
Clear mission. Yes, sir.
That's the first step in figuring out where to find people.
Okay.
Now, with that in mind, where do you want to connect with them? You just told us who you're interested in helping. Where do you find them?
Well, there's a release center that I attend a church at. It's a Christian church on Saturday nights, and there's a release center here of people getting out of prison. And I really would like to connect with them, but there's not a lot of social interaction there. But I'm not really connected with people getting out except for that right now. So,
but it's a start.
It is a start. Yeah.
The reason I'm bringing this up is I could sit here and tell you a whole bunch of different ways that I've seen that work, that other people have seen work, but none of them are personalized to who you are. Right? You have an incredible story. You have an incredible passion. And so whether it's through the Release Center or starting to get creative, maybe it's connecting with local churches or even local colleges that might have programs geared towards prison education.
Right.
So I went to a small Christian college up in Indiana that actually had a pretty robust prison program where they would send professors several days a week into the state penitentiary. And we were actually getting to a spot where prisoners were graduating with either a degree in business or biblical studies and going off and doing things. There's now churches populated with elders and deacons and pastors nationwide who are former felons who have now completely had a complete shift in their life through programs like this.
Right.
And if you don't have any there in Glendale, maybe this is one that you create.
Wow.
So maybe this is.
Pause right there for a second. You just said, wow. What happened, Sean?
Well, like for years in prison, I wanted to create, I had this dream of creating some kind of something that could help people getting out. I've got a very limited family, and I really am passionate about helping people who are getting out of prison. My family helped me, and since I've been out, I've lost my parents, and so I had a support system, but there's so many people that don't have that support. And in my opinion, it's a job, it's a place to live, and if you can have those things and get on your feet, then you have those ability. But people I had to learn how to spend money too,
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. You get to be who you wish you'd had.
Wow. That's kind of mind-blowing to think about. Yeah. Sorry to steal the whole show here, but yeah,
No,
that's kind of cool.
We're glad, right? Maybe it wasn't an accident that Alyssa's computer didn't have a microphone attached to it.
It wasn't. Yeah.
Right? Like, and for anyone, by the way, who's hearing Sean's story, it's like, that's so cool. And mine sounds nothing like that. You don't have to copy Sean's story. In fact, I'm going to venture a guess. Sean, correct me if I'm wrong here. You don't want most of the people on this call copying your story.
No, I don't.
Right? There's a lot of it that you wouldn't want to repeat. Right?
Yeah, that's
You're literally trying to get people out of it. But y'all, that's part of how do I find people. It's what is my passion point for people. If your story is like Sean's and you want to get to the people that are coming out of the prison system and connect with them right there where they are, do that. If your passion is a single parent, is to connect with other single parents, go do that. If your passion is to connect with people in the church on how to steward things differently, go do that. I'm not as concerned with what your passion is so much as I'm concerned that you have one. Yeah. When you have a passion and a mission, it's not about where do I find people. It's about who's going to try to keep me from going out and finding these people who fit my mission and my purpose and my passion for what I'm doing. That's going to drive things.
And I want to bridge the gap because there's some people here that are hearing this and going, okay, that's great for Sean. How does that answer the question for me?
Right.
So many times people want to, well, tell me, do these 3 things, and then I'll have a bunch of people that want to be coached by me. And that's not how this works. Okay. If that existed, we would just do that. But we can't determine who you're passionate about serving. You guys, there's 57% of people in America live paycheck to paycheck. That's a couple 100 million people. So where are these people? They're all over the place. There's too many for you to coach. There's too many for us to coach. And so for you to be able to figure out who am I passionate about serving and where do I find those people, that is how you figure out the answer to the question, where do I find people to coach? Really the question is, where do I find the people that I want to coach? Where do I find the people that are a good fit for me? And here's how I know that, because I'm passionate about those people. And I think, Tim, that was a great call out. Sean gets to be what he needed, but maybe didn't have. And so for you that are watching, ask yourself, what support did I need that I maybe didn't have? And how do I be that for somebody else? So wonderful, wonderful question. All right, let's go again. So I'm going to lower everybody's hands. All right. So the next question we want to tackle is, how do people afford coaching if they're broke? It might sound like I really want to charge for coaching, but I'd feel guilty because I know they're struggling and I don't want to benefit from their pain. Raise your hand if you've been wondering, how do people afford it? Or maybe it's that like, man, I'd feel guilty doing that. Raise your hand and we'll see who we can talk to. Same thing that we just did with Sean. So it'll be just.
While those hands are going up, just to toss this out to Sean, we got a message from Cindy. Cindy suggesting checking out a prison ministry called New Horizons. So Sean, if you didn't jot that down yet, New Horizons, check it out. Apparently it's a great one. So just wanted to toss that out there. Thanks,
Awesome.
Cindy.
I love it. Let's go to Rebecca Brink. Rebecca, hit that unmute button for us. Give Rebecca just a second.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Where are you joining from today?
I am in Morgantown, West Virginia.
All right, I love it. Thank you.
So we've gone from Arizona to West Virginia, one side of the country to the other.
Right.
Love it.
Right. So we talked about a few different ways you could pose the question. Which one resonated most with you, Rebecca? Is it more of like an affordability thing, or for you, is it like I'd feel kind of guilty? Or tell us about where your head's at with this question.
I think the challenge for me, honestly, is that I recognize the importance in it. So it's how we communicate to them the importance of the value of what they're going to spend to be able to get what the end game really is, and understanding how that messaging should be relayed. Because I think at the end of the day, if they're passionate enough about it, then hopefully they understand why it's important. But obviously not necessarily knowing what people are charging, that's where for me you get a little bit of uncertainty of, how do I communicate it to them and help them understand that whatever this cost is going to be, the value is worth it, I guess, if that makes sense.
So, Rebecca, same thing. I'd love your permission to ask a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca, what's the cost to somebody of not doing this, of not taking care of their financial life?
Oh, shoot, it's immeasurable, honestly. I mean, it can be health, it's safety, it's concern. I mean, the list is ongoing and so long if they don't make it a priority.
Yeah. So is it safe to say that somebody may have a shortened lifespan?
Absolutely.
What about their marriage? What are the chances of their marriage succeeding well?
It's certainly going to be far more challenging if it does succeed. That's for sure.
Awesome. So if coaching was 50 grand, would it be worth it?
Yeah, if you value those things, for sure. So I guess then at that point, it's about asking the questions that will resonate with the individual you're talking to or the group you're speaking to.
Jackpot. Right. And so it's getting into what do they value? What do they think is important? If I'm talking to a singles group about saving their marriage, I'm missing it.
True. Very true.
It's not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. But if instead I ask people, what is the most important thing to you? If I'm working with single parents and I ask, what's the most important thing to you? Probably the most common answer, I'm going to take a guess here, is I want my kids to have a solid future. I want them to have a better chance at life than I did. You think I'm probably accurate on that one, Rebecca?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the way what you're saying, what it resonates with me is taking that pause moment of us not being too quick to focus on the cost that we're trying to ask them to pay, as opposed to stepping back and taking time to develop a relationship with the people that we're trying to help so that we can get to that place to know the right questions.
Yeah. Now, by the way, I don't ask somebody how exciting would this be and then just charge them half of whatever I think they think it's worth. Like, I'm not going to say, like, would you pay $50,000 for this? Yep. Well, then I'll do it for half. Right? Like, the purpose of this is not to see how much money I can take from somebody.
Right.
But you ask, how do I make sure that they see the value? Because I see the value in it.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's worth to sit down with somebody who's going to ask me the real questions, who's going to push me to think differently, who's going to challenge my perspectives and really impact my way of thinking. And that is tremendously good stuff.
So, Rebecca, based on this conversation, knowing that coaches typically charge per session, okay, where do you think you would start out as a coach in terms of your cost per session?
In all honesty, I can't necessarily speak to that yet without having a fuller understanding of what the content is that I would be going through with them and how many sessions we're talking about. Because I think there's a balance between what content and how many sessions that might take, and then how I value that with my own personal time of what I'm giving. I think there's a few elements there. So I couldn't put a dollar amount on it at this time, I don't think. Probably because I also don't have confidence yet in what I would be able to give to them since I haven't gone through it yet.
Sure. Yeah.
But now you're jumping ahead again, right?
Yes, it's correct.
Because you're trying to figure out, how do I bring a particular value? You don't know what they're looking for.
True.
There's a very big difference between somebody who is desperate, fighting, trying to figure out how they're going to keep their lights on, and a multimillionaire who's trying to figure out, how do I make sure my kids aren't idiots?
Agree.
How do I make sure I don't spoil the next generation with what I'm leaving behind? I've worked with people that made $1,700 a month, and I've worked with a guy who made $174,000 a month, and people everywhere in between. Not everybody who's going to be benefited by a coach is somebody who is struggling financially.
True.
The reason that people come to us is because they've hit some kind of a wall that they don't know how to get past. And sometimes the wall is an income wall, and sometimes it's an outgo wall, and sometimes it's a million other things. And so until we find out where we can really add value, it's really, really difficult, which is also why, by the way, the reason I don't and haven't ever posted my coaching fees on a website. Because somebody would look at that and they don't have a context to understand that yet. Let's figure out, where are you trying to go? What's it going to take to get there? Great. I think we can do this thing where we coach once a month for 12 months and then see where we are. But I think we're going to create a lot of value in 12 months. It's $250 a month. Are you ready to get started?
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Rebecca?
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
And Rebecca, if content is the measure of how much you charge, guess where you can find any and all content for free?
Yeah, online.
It ain't about content, my friend. content isn't going to ask you a question that's directly based on your situation and challenge your way of thinking and sit in it with you. So that right there, we're going to give you guys averages on what our coaches charge, but we want to talk through because you choose what to charge based on the value of the problems that you solve.
Okay.
Every business solves a problem, and they charge accordingly based on the value of the problems that you solve, which is why, I'll pay $2 or $3 for a tube of chapstick, but if I've been in the desert for 30 days, I'll pay $1,000 for this because my problem is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, people ask well, how long does somebody work with a coach? That's like saying, well, how long do you work with a doctor? Depends on what's wrong with you. If you've got some terminal illness, you're going to work with them for a long time. If you've got, just a minor thing, you're in and you're out, and it's a one-time thing. So does that help, Rebecca?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Really good question. So let's give some averages here. So the average coach coming out of our training charges $200 per session. Okay. The average person coming out of our training charges $200 per session. Becky said, I'm a CPA and I currently bill at $150 per hour. I feel like this content is far more valuable. Is that compatible? Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. So $200 per session is comparable. Okay. Or is the average coming out of our training. Now, anybody know what the average cable bill in America is? Give me in the chat. Anybody know what the average cable bill in America is today? 150, 185, 250, 150. All right. The average cable bill in America is $217 per month. This doesn't include subscriptions, friends. This is just the average cable bill in America. The average cable bill, okay? And so our coaches on average are charging $200 per session. So what is very normal, okay, is somebody meets with a coach and they say, we really want to work with a coach, but I don't know how I'm going to be able to afford it. And the coach will often say, hey, if you cut that cable, we could work together. Cut the cable for 6 months and let's work on this problem together to get your house in order. Now, if somebody is not willing to cut their cable TV in order to work with a coach, what does that tell you about where they're at mentally? What does that tell you about where they're at in here? If they're saying, well, I don't want to cut my cable to work with a coach. Martin says not ready. Amy says not ready. Yeah, you guys are right. Rebecca said their priorities are not lined up. And you know what? That's okay. I'm not mad at somebody if they're not ready. They're just not ready. I wasn't ready to fix my tax situation 3 years in of avoiding the IRS. It took me four years to be ready. So it's just where they're at, and that's okay. So here's what I want to do with you guys. We're going to keep going. Tim,
real quick. One thing I want to just real quick on this topic before we move off of it.
Sure.
Because we got a really great statement coming into the chat box here. Someone said this can feel almost predatory at times, like we're waiting for somebody to be in a tough spot and take advantage. Listen, y'all, here's one of the most important things I've learned in years and years and years of coaching. Where there is no margin, there is no ministry. When I charge appropriately to the people that can actually afford it, meaning the income is there and this is a matter of shifting priorities and realizing what's really important, it gives me the space to be able to give coaching away to those that can't. And so I've had many a time where I've given away complimentary sessions to widows. I've given complimentary sessions to single moms. I've given complimentary sessions to people who've gone through some stuff. I've paid for other coaches to coach somebody after a big natural disaster. Like I've done these things.
I connected with a widow in the chat on this call who we're going to pay for her to get coaching.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do.
Absolutely. But we can do that by charging appropriately where we can, so we can give it away to those that truly cannot within our boundaries. And so this is one of those things I'm a big fan of, is understanding this. And this is why we're challenging the perspective, because most of our perspective to start with, she says socialism, not socialism. Trust me, it's not. That would be Oh man, you don't know Jeremy and I well enough. But the really funny thing with this is it does allow us the opportunity to do things well. There is no nonprofit or not-for-profit organization in the country that can continue to function if it doesn't take in at least enough to cover its outgo. And our businesses are the same. Our practices are the same. Our churches are the same. If the church doesn't bring in enough money to function, the church doesn't continue in ministry. And so learning these things, but our natural go-to is, I don't think I can charge. I think this is going to feel really weird. So let's push on that, and let's push on both sides of this equation. And it takes some time to work through and think through, but this is a conversation worth having. So anyway, thanks, Jeremy.
You bet. All right. So I'll tell you guys what we're going to be doing, what we are doing this month. So go to the chat, and I'm gonna drop this in here for a moment. Okay. So Financial Coach Master Training is a year of access, and that's $19.95. The price is going up to $22.95, so it's going up by $300 in the new year. So December 31st is the last time to be able to get it at that lower price. But we're doing something this month. We had a Black Friday deal that was just crazy, and we got a ton of feedback that people were saying this deal is amazing. And so we decided to bring our Black Friday deal back for the end of the year. And so it's Christmas, that sort of thing. So here's what we're doing. You guys can see in the chat. Financial Coach Master Training is normally $19.95. Using the promo code Best Deal Ever, you're going to get that for only $8.45. I know it's a stupid deal. And so here's what I'm going to do, Tim. I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a second, because I'm going to show you guys what it looks like to walk through this. Okay. Tim, can you see my screen?
Yes. Now we got it.
All right. So when you click that link in the chat box, it's going to bring you here, Ramsey Solutions, the online store. You're going to click Add to Cart, and you're going to go to Checkout here. I already have one in there, so let me update it to 1. Okay. So what'll happen? You go from, so you click the promo code or the coupon code right there, and you do Best Deal Ever. And that's going to take it from $19.95 down to $8.45. Okay, that is the best deal we've ever done on Financial Coach Master Training. And like I said, it went over so well at Black Friday. We decided we'll bring it back one more time before we raise the price starting in January. So in January, it's going up to $22.95. Right now, you get it for $8.45. Now, some of you guys are going to want to take advantage of this deal, but you won't be able to start the training right away. Maybe you've got. I was talking to a teacher the other day who said, I don't have margin to start my training until the summertime, but can I take advantage of this deal now and then start my training in the summer? Yes, you can do that. So if you can't start the training right away, but you want to postpone it a few months or even longer, you're more than willing to have you do that. So once you do that, you click proceed to checkout, you'll do the billing stuff, and it's all pretty standard from there. So, all right. So let's keep going. Because I know we're a little over time, but you guys are here, and we want to give you guys an opportunity to ask some more questions.